You are listening to the Pencil and Paper Podcast Network.
Hey Ramblers! Today's episode is brought to you by Fangoria. Since 1979, Fangoria has been the authority in the world of contemporary horror. As the only sanctuary for horror aficionados in its early days, it has now grown into an empire that expands beyond its celebrated magazine. From t-shirts, coffee mugs, beanies, enamel pins, there's something for every horror fanatic in your world, even if it's you. So head on over to shop.fangoria.com/pencil and paper productions or use code pencil and paper productions at checkout to get 20% off your first order or magazine subscription. Yes, it is a mouthful, which is why there are links in the show notes down below. That's shop.fangoria.com/pencil and paper productions or code pencil and paper productions at checkout for 20% off. Fangoria, first in fright since 1979.
Buy it or we'll tear your soul apart.
You're listening to the Horror Ramblings podcast, the show about all things horror. We hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the Horror Ramblings podcast, the show about all things horror. You know, that show where the two guys talk about everything and anything, sometimes things that aren't even horror related, just because we like to talk about things. You guys know us, it's me, Les, and of course, as always, the awesome Steven. How you doing today, Steven?
Doing all right. Can't complain.
I'm going to complain a little bit. I wish the weather would make up its mind. I know we just talked about that, but just going to say that Mother Nature needs to get it together because I'm tired of 80 one day and 30 the next day.
It's frustrating this time of year because you don't know what to expect, because one minute I was thinking, hey, I got time to do some yard work, and then the rain comes in, and then like, well, I'll try to do it tomorrow, and then it's cold, and just nonsense. I just want something stable to what I know, what to look forward to.
Yeah, it just it's one of those things where you're stuck in this rut where the week is nice, but you have to work, and then you have other responsibilities through the week, and then weekend comes and you're like, cool, I'll get stuff done on the weekend that I want to do or that I know needs to be done around home, and then it's cold. Mm-hmm. Oh man, there is a lot of random news I want to talk about this morning.
Okay.
Maybe not horror related, but I feel like it could sort of fit in that category. The new Fallout series is getting a lot of praise. I don't know if you've gotten the chance to watch it. I have not yet. I have seen a lot of clips from it and things like that nature. I appreciate that the show takes place after the games. A lot of people I don't think realize that. And I've seen a lot of fans of the games who are just nitpicking and complaining about things. And somebody put it perfectly. I saw a video the other day. Somebody put it perfectly. They were like, why do you have to find reasons to hate things so much? Like, why do you have to dig so deep to find reasons? Just enjoy it for what it is. If you want to nitpick a little bit, that's fine. But why are you digging so deep to nitpick? One of the things that I guess the dog in the series is a girl, and in the game, the dog was a boy. And apparently some people were really pissed off about that. And I'm like, what?
Well, to my understanding, it's a different dog every game. So, again, what does it matter?
Exactly.
This is a different dog. Jesus Christ.
And you know,
man.
I do want their secrets to looking so good after 200 years. I mean, come on. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just. There's one character I really want to point out though. He's been getting a lot of attention, and I cannot think of his name off the top of my head. The actor.
We're talking about the main guy.
The ghoul.
Yeah, Walton Goggins
Yes.
is probably one of those actors that I've been watching since The Shield, a matter of fact, way back when on FX. And I took note of him there. I was like, this guy's got something. This guy's, he's one to watch. And then he would pop up here and there in little things. And I was like, all right, he's getting some work. And just seen his star rise, and I feel like it's finally hit to where people are noticing him because he is such a great actor, and he gives it his all in this show.
And you know what's funny? I think the reason that I like what I've seen of him as the ghoul so far is because, and you can judge me for this if you want to, The very first thing I really honestly feel like I had seen him in was The Hateful Eight.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked him in that. Yes, he was kind of racist to a degree in that, but I didn't feel like he really, like, by the end of it, you felt like him and Samuel L. Jackson sort of formed like a fucked up friendship.
Yeah.
And when I see him as the Ghoul, part of me feels like he got some of his inspiration from the character that he played in The Hateful Eight. Like, I see similarities.
I see that.
And all the clips that I've seen of him in the series, he's a fucking badass. Pardon the language. There's no better way to put it, but yeah, he's a badass. And I really just, yeah. I just saw a clip, spoiler for anybody. It was one of the suits of armor. They were all in, I think they were trying to take him down. And he was sitting there and he was like talking about how they have a fatal flaw. And he knows because he used to wear one. And then he shoots. And he's not even fucking paying attention. He's just like, bang, from the side, you know? Just the suit falls. And he's like, I guess not, when he's talking about it being fixed. And I'm just like, man. But yeah, I need to watch it because I haven't sat down and watched it. But from what I've seen, I think it looks like, and you said you have watched it, and so I mean, it just looks like it's a good series. And if you,
I think it's, I would highly recommend it. And I did find or read just the other day that it did get picked up for season 2. So apparently it's been enough of a ratings hit for them that they're willing to go that second season. Thank goodness. But now I will admit I've only played one Fallout game, and that was Fallout 4.
yeah,
And so I don't have any of the other lore or, well, that doesn't count. Fallout 4 is all I've really played, you know, and then of course there's all these others that are very popular. I know New Vegas is always one that I keep hearing as like oh man, the greatest Fallout game ever made, but again, never played it. So I don't have a lot of that connection. Like, I knew enough, so when I would see certain things or hear certain things, I'd be like, oh, hey, that's the thing. Or, oh, look, that's the thing that I remember from the game.
yeah,
So there would be vague recollections, but nothing that would detract me from enjoying it. And again, it's like you said, man, this is like 10 years after all the games, so they've set it aside enough time.
yeah,
They did actually set up some hints as to how the true ending of Part 4 ended, if you think about it, based on, because the Brotherhood, they have like this big airship, I guess it would be. And in one of the endings of Fallout 4, the airship falls.
yeah,
Well, if that airship is still standing, then you can deduce that one of 3 endings is not the true ending because the airship still stands by canon standards.
yeah.
So which way it went, I don't know, but I thought that was it's a neat little detail that I'm sure a lot of these people are bitching and moaning about for whatever reason.
People love to complain.
I don't. Well, it's like you said, though. It's just, who cares? You know, just enjoy it for what it is, and enjoy that this thing that you never thought you'd see. I never thought in a million years when I was growing up I'd see superheroes on screen the way we see them now. Video games adapted into movies and series the way we see them now. I could not fathom it.
Yeah.
And now there it is, and people still got to bitch and complain about this stuff. I just don't understand it. Be happy.
Yeah. And to be honest, I kind of feel like I feel better for the fans that have maybe played one game and they watch the series and they like it. And then that makes them want to play the other games, because it is bringing some resurgence back from some of the Fallout games from the past. You know, people are actually starting to play those again. And, you know, if you want to be more familiar with it, just get on YouTube and just, you know, look up Fallout and they'll explain pretty much everything you need. You know, I didn't know that much about the ghouls, and I was watching some stuff from the series, and I'm like, okay, so the ghouls can live a long time. They're almost immortal to some degree.
Yeah, to some degree.
And so I was looking that up, and then, you know, there was there's a character in the games who's a ghoul who ends up turning into a tree. And, you know, I kind of, as weird as it sounds, I kind of hope that they like show that in the series. Another thing I didn't know was in the games, Mothman. You can actually see like a Mothman type thing in one of the Fallout games.
I feel like I've heard that, but I don't think that was the one I played, and if it was, I don't remember it.
Yeah, I've been seeing some clips of some people playing, and they run into them, and there's one where this lady runs into him, and she's like kind of looks like a Pokemon. I wonder if I could catch it. And she walks up to it and it like flies off and it scares the shit out of her. But you know, that'd be a funny little like nod if somebody, you know, in the show was like looking out in the desert and you just see like a quick flash of something and they're like, what the hell was that? But no, yeah, I definitely need to give it a watch because I've heard more good than I've heard bad, and I've heard that everybody who's bitching about it, they're just nitpicking for the dumbest reasons. And I hate when people do that because it's so toxic. It's just give it a rest. Just enjoy it for what it is, people. Come on.
I mean, if it was dog shit, sure, you'd have every reason to piss and moan about it. But we're talking about a well-made show that took maybe some liberties that doesn't fit to your stand. But is it detracting or taking away from what the show is as a whole? No, it's a very solid story.
Exactly.
I mean, the ghoul alone, his story, I didn't know what it was going to be. And when you get it all fleshed out, it makes so much sense. And you're like, holy shit, man.
Yeah.
I love this guy even more. And I'm on his side.
Yeah. He, you know, from what I've seen, and I know that I need more context, but from what I've seen of him, he, you know, he's a badass, obviously, but he's had to survive. And,
yeah,
you know, from the clip I saw with his daughter in the beginning, like, I already feel for the guy. So, but.
Yeah, that one, again, was one of those things that I wasn't certain about, like, because you see the trailers and you're thinking, yeah, I guess he's kind of the good guy, like the Clint Eastwood-esque type from, you know, certain movies where he's the man with no name and kind of stuff. So you're not sure where his allegiances lie, but once you get a backstory, and even when he seems like he's doing bad, when you have the context to back it up, once it all kind of comes together, because they don't give it to you all at once.
Yeah.
And I like how they do that. Every little story beat, the way they kind of play it together, everything, the mystery of any and everything throughout the series is given to you just so, and it all comes to a head right like toward the very last episode, and you're like, oh shit. And how they do it, it's fantastic. So I really applaud them for the way they played the narrative out.
Yeah. So Ramblers, if you haven't watched it, give it a watch, because I think it kind of teeters on the line where it could turn into something more of a horror type aesthetic.
There's plenty of gore. I'll tell you that. Gore hounds, you'll love it.
So there we go.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on to some, how do I put it? Sad, happy news, I guess you could say, and to a degree. I know we kind of just talked about this briefly before we actually started recording. Brad Dourif has come out and said that he is retiring from acting aside from voicing Chucky. Now, I know in the new Chucky series, they do show him in his human form, so maybe he will still do a little bit of performances related to the Chucky franchise. I could see that. I think he's just at a point, he's in his 70s now, I believe.
I would track.
And, you know, I feel like he's at a point now where he probably wants to just enjoy some time at home, enjoy time with his family. I mean, most of his family works on the series with him, which is awesome. Yeah. But, you know, we're still getting him. He's still going to voice Chucky, one of his most iconic roles, if not his most iconic role. And I'm okay with that. You know, if he's happy and he enjoys being just Chucky, then more power to him as far as that goes. Because in all honesty, I can't remember the last time that I've seen him in something else. Like I'm trying to place it, and I just, unless, you know, I know I've missed a lot of movies. So, and as bad as it sounds, I am a fan of Brad Dourif, but it's not like I seek him out in films, if that makes sense.
Right.
You know, there's only like a handful of actors that I actually seek out, and when it comes to horror, normally it's Robert Englund that I seek out in films. If I see that Brad Dourif's in something, then I will look into it more and things like that. But I cannot remember the last time I've seen him in a film that didn't have to do with Chucky.
It's been a minute. I'm sure there's something out there that we're not remembering, or some TV appearance, movie appearance. There's got to be.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm like you. I think it's a lot of Chucky-related media.
Yeah, and as bad as it sounds, like I'm trying to think the last time I remember seeing him in something, and I know that he's been in stuff since then. But the last time I remember seeing him in stuff, and a lot of people don't remember that he was in it, he was the sheriff in the Halloween remake that Rob Zombie did.
That's right.
That's like the last thing I remember him in. I know that sounds awful, but Brad Dourif...
Okay.
Go ahead.
I would say the last movie that I probably saw him in physically would be the Deadwood movie they did for HBO.
Okay.
Because he was a recurring character in that.
That's right.
But
yeah.
Looking at his filmography, past that, outside of Chucky, I haven't seen any of those movies.
Yeah, he's
so 2019.
He's slowing down, and that's perfectly understandable. I mean, I don't think it's because of health reasons or anything like that. I think the guy just wants a little bit of a break, and he's been finding a lot of success with Chucky. I need to just sit down and binge it because I've been seeing clips of it. I've been seeing all kinds of parts of it. Spoiler warning for anybody. The last clips that I had seen of it, Chucky was launching a nuke or trying to launch nukes to kill a bunch of people. I love it. And he even talks about he wants to be the most famous serial killer ever.
They finally addressed Chucky and Megan, by the way. In one of the last episodes that I watched.
I saw that wasn't he flipping through the
flipping through channels, saw a bunch of different killer doll type stuff, and then he got to there and he's like, fuck this, fuck you, Mithrigan, and
I remember seeing that because I was laughing about the Mithrigan because I remembered us talking about it on the show, and you were even like, because you even talked about how the title was confusing on the poster, and you're like, is it Megan or is it Mithrigan? That's what it looks like. And then I hear that, and it instantly took me back to when we talked about that. And I'm sitting there just laughing, and Samantha looks at me. She's like, "What are you laughing about?" And I'm like, "It's a joke you probably wouldn't understand." And I love it because he was watching. Let's see, it was first that movie, The Boy, and he was talking about how it was just stupid. And then he clicked to Dead Silence, and I like what he said because Chucky said what I was thinking. It didn't even get a franchise. I'm like, it didn't, and it deserved one. But yeah, I'm glad we sort of got our Megan crossover to a degree.
See, that scene could have also worked if they'd have played the Child's Play movie. Like the movie, like we've said before. I think Katrina made the comment, which was like, why doesn't that movie be like the movie they made about Chucky, but all the facts are wrong or some shit like that?
Right.
So it's like some half-assed movie adaptation of his life, and they butchered everything, and he could have just made a comment. It's like, this is absolutely not how it went down.
I would have laughed if if they'd have shown it and he'd like, he doesn't even fucking sound like me.
Yeah. Who is this putz?
Oh God, could you imagine if Mark Hamill guest starred on Chucky? That would be hilarious.
I think that would be great.
Like they could throw that in, and didn't they just put in oh God, I can't think of his name. His last name's Waters.
Oh, John Waters.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I couldn't think. Was he already on?
I haven't seen him yet. I know the most recent episode. I'm glad you kind of brought up Chucky too, because I'm gonna bitch about this. So for some goddamn reason, and I can't wrap my head around it. When the second half of this new season had started, Peacock had been doing this day after. Once it aired on USA and Sci-Fi, they would drop it the day after on Peacock. Now suddenly that's changed. Now you got to wait a week. Even though the first episode came out the day after, and then I went to look for episode 6 the other day, and I was like, what the fuck? And then I see headlines, it's like, yeah, Peacock has made a change, so now you got to wait 7 days. I'm like, but why?
Yeah.
None of that makes sense.
I heard rumors that Shudder was getting it quicker.
If they are, then fuck them. I'll go to Shudder and watch it.
I kind of want to look that up because I had seen something about it, and then the Peacock thing, I had seen something about that, and then I was reading comments, and somebody's like, "Well, it's on Shudder," and I'm like, I don't know if maybe the people just think that the series isn't going to be on Peacock anymore and be on Shudder, or if maybe it's hitting Shudder sooner.
Well, I'm gonna look now while we're going through this, because this it's bullshit.
Yeah, because I don't want to say that and it not be the case. So
again, I just don't understand it. Like, what was it hurting your ratings or anything like that? I mean, everybody has been doing this day after. Hulu does that for a lot of shows, and it makes sense. If you're not going to be there live, fair. You're not going to get it live. I get that. It's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. But if I get it the next day, fine.
Yeah.
Who's it hurting? I don't know.
Oh, don't even get me started on streaming and everything. There's some movie that my dad was asking me about, and I was like, well, it's on Netflix. That's the only thing it's on is on Netflix. And he's like, oh, well, do we have Netflix? I said, no. We let the Netflix go because there wasn't really anything we were watching on it. I was like, but let me look at the pricing. I about fucking puked when I saw the pricing. It's $7 with ads, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, that's okay. But it's also, it says certain content not available. So they're not letting you watch certain things. So not only am I going to have ads, you're not going to let me watch certain things when they first come out. Then there's the standard, which is like $16, which has certain I think it has most of the content, but then there's like the premium, and the premium has no ads, and you get everything, and you get like the highest definition possible.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like $25 a month.
Yep.
It's ridiculous.
That is, yeah. The fact that Amazon even pulled that stunt where suddenly now they're throwing in ads on their shit, and it's like, well, for an extra $2 a month, it's like, no, bitch, I paid you everything that you know. That's not how this works. You know, fuck you.
You know, I
paid my money.
I will say we have Peacock, and we have it with ads, because I get it for a discounted rate, and we have it with the ads, and it's like real cheap. But I like what they do for movies. If you have the ads through Peacock for movies, before the movie starts, they play like 2 minutes or 3 minutes worth of ads. You watch the ads, and then there are no ads through the movie. And
that, I feel like, is better.
Yeah.
You're not interrupting the show. You're giving me all the ads up front. Fine. That's okay.
Yeah. And I think with the TV shows, I feel like some of them do that, but then others, there might be like an ad in between. But the ads aren't that long, so it really doesn't bother me. But man, yeah, I hate when the companies are like, well, we're going to start putting ads in, but you can pay more and no ads. Well, you guys can go to hell.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know if the Shudder thing is true or not. I figured.
No, they've only got the first 2 seasons. However, I will say to all the people who are on Shudder complaining about the show, get fucked, because they're not even making good. Here's the comments of negativity. I made it 16 minutes in before I had to turn it off. I will never watch this gay propaganda again.
One of those.
That is literally anytime you see something negative or a negative review. Here's another one. Too many gay moments, pointing out an emphasis on trying to push it in our face is hard to watch and cringe-worthy because of it. So, you know, good to see that Shudder's got a bunch of homophobes hanging out on their page.
Even Chucky's not a homophobe.
Yeah, you know, pointed that out straight. You know, just like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I loved it. He was like, you have a kid? Gender fluid. Really? I'm not a monster.
Exactly. But, hey, yeah, fuck these people. Anyway. But yeah, Chucky, awesome show. Can't wait to see more.
Yeah. And
glad Brad is finding his peace wherever he needs it.
Yeah. And I'm really happy that his kids have sort of become involved with the show and everything, because I actually really liked Cult of Chucky.
Yeah.
And his daughter in that, like, I didn't even realize that was his daughter in that. And I get that she is his daughter, but she's not one of those, like, when I see her, I don't instantly think, oh, that's Brad Dourif's daughter.
Right.
And that's hard for a lot of celebrity kids to sort of get out of the shadow of their parents. But I feel like she's really made her own. And even working on the series related to what her dad is really well known for, she's still making it on her own within that series. And I love that about her. So, yeah, I'll give Chucky props all day. I don't care what anybody says. You know, you want to be a dick and hate it for the wrong reasons, fine. There's going to be 10 other people that love it for the reasons that you hate it.
Yeah, I don't understand why people have to be...
People fucking nitpicking.
So hateful, man. But whatever.
Oh, man. Do you have any news? I'll see if you have anything speaking to you.
I feel like this week was kind of a slow burn of a week. I didn't really see anything that really stood out. Nothing big. At least nothing, because I'm looking back over it and...
I was going to say, yeah,
I'm not really seeing anything.
I feel like this week for horror has been just kind of... We already know most of what's coming out. Luckily, nobody's passed away.
Yeah. Or at least not that we remember.
Yeah, or not that we've seen anywhere. I mean, OJ died, and that's kind of a horror story, but I guess for certain reasons. I will say this much. Say what you will about Caitlyn Jenner. Like, say what you will about that whole thing. But I don't know if you saw what Caitlyn Jenner put up on X.
I don't remember.
All it said was good riddance. Hashtag And people were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you'd say that." And Caitlyn Jenner was like, "I don't give a fuck what you think." It didn't say it exactly like that, but in a nicer way. So
Well, yeah.
yeah, you feel the way you feel, and I love it. Just good riddance.
I mean, there have been a lot of people making jokes at his expense after his death, and I understand people will say, "Oh, gotta respect the dead." Fuck him. He is a murderer who got away with it. I don't give a shit what anyone says.
I guess so. He wrote that book, If I Did It, and that book actually, I guess they took it off the shelves, like it wasn't going to happen. Well, he still owed the family damages, apparently. So the family actually got the rights to the book, and they published the book to earn money from it, but they changed the title to I Did It.
No, technically, it's still If I Did It. They hid the if.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean.
I saw that, and I thought that was very clever.
They changed it. Yeah.
It's like, well, it looks like it says I did it, but it's still If I Did. Just
which is
put it right there.
Which is hilarious. And, in a way, that's sort of their revenge. I know I shouldn't laugh about that. Well, you know what, like you said, fuck him.
I ain't got no love for the man.
There's a Naked Gun scene that everybody's been making into a meme. It's Leslie Nielsen and OJ's in the wheelchair. It's at the ball field. And it's like God, heaven, and you see OJ, and then God, Leslie Nielsen slaps his back and he goes down the steps. And when he's flying over the edge, it says hell. He's flying over the steps. And I'm just sitting there laughing my ass off at it because I'm like, it's so wrong, but it's so funny. Like,
I mean, he can. I guess I just don't have it in me to give a shit about a monster, respect for the dead and all that aside, it just, fuck him.
Yeah.
I really don't care. I mean, he's dead. Good riddance. I agree with Caitlyn Jenner 100%.
Yeah, and
good fucking riddance.
I've run into a few people, like, they refuse to watch, like, the Naked Gun movies and everything because he was in them. And I'm like, I said, you got to think about when he was in them and everything else, and you need to understand that it's just a movie. Like, I'm not going to let it. It's like the Kevin Spacey thing. I like Kevin Spacey as an actor. Do I like him as a human being? Not so much.
Yeah.
It's like you with liking The Cosby Show. It's something that's entertaining. I enjoyed The Cosby Show. Doesn't mean that you have to exactly like Bill Cosby, Yeah.
I don't know if... There are a lot of other things to like in that show other than just Bill Cosby.
I don't know if you've seen it or not, but there is a video going around. It's just the audio from it that you have to listen to. Someone who was a fan of George Carlin, they uploaded all of his stand-up into an AI system. And this AI system did a hour-long stand-up bit as George Carlin. It was eerie because it sounded just like some comedy that George Carlin would do. The reason that I bring it up is at the end of it, because the whole comedy bit is about comedians coming back in AI form. And my favorite part of it, George Carlin's like, people don't think a computer can say a fart joke as good as a comedian. Well, let me come up with one off the top of my AI mind. And he says, so Fart's getting a divorce from her husband, and she's sitting there with her sister, and she's feeling really guilty about it. And she says to her sister, am I doing the right thing? And her sister goes, he's been holding you back for years. You need to get out of that asshole. Stupid.
Wow.
But it sounds like George Carlin, the way that and I'm not doing it justice, but it really does sound like a comedy bit that George Carlin's doing. But at the end of it, George Carlin says, I will state my case for one comedian that I'm sure all of us think would be better in AI form, Bill Cosby. But it was eerie. It was like eerie, talking about scary things. Because if they can make it that convincing, who knows what else they're going to do. It's no wonder celebrities are afraid to sign away their likeness. Like, I get that.
Well, even the fact that they did it means, in my opinion, they don't realize how ironic that is. Because George Carlin would have been the first to say, fuck you to AI.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I mean, don't get me wrong. If I could hear some new George Carlin material that really sounded like him, that'd be cool. But I also would just love it if he was still alive and able to do comedy. So, but he'd be in his 80s now, I think. So.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, we're talking about people going to hell. We're talking about hell. There's a guy that lives there called the Devil, and he just so happened to be on a talk show, late night with the devil. which we both finally got the chance to watch, which I am so happy about because I feel like every time we go to talk about a movie, I'm a slacker and I have not watched it. Well, I watched this bitch last night, and I have opinions.
All right.
You want my opinion first, or you want your opinion?
I want to hear yours because you said you got a hot take, so I'm really curious.
This movie, I will say, I feel like it was a good movie, but it just, here it goes. This movie didn't do it for me.
Okay.
I enjoyed it, but I feel like maybe I will give it one more watch just to see if I enjoy it more and then leave it. There was just something about the atmosphere of it. I felt like there was more in the trailers and in the build up to it. There was a lot of hype around the movie. And I think I went in expecting more out of it. So I was a little, in all honesty, I was a little let down. Okay. Like the effects were great, everything was great, but by the time that things started to build up, it was over. And to me, the ending of this film, like the last 15 minutes probably, I'd say, it felt like a fever dream. And you get out of it and you're just like, there's so many more answers. Like, I understand leaving things mysterious, but I would have liked to have known more about the cult and in the tall trees and all that at the end. And, you know, I like the twist at the end. And spoiler warning for anybody listening, you know, I like the twist at the end where he's seeing his wife who's dying and she wants him to free her and kill her. And then it turns out that he stabbed the girl, you know. Cool twist. But I felt like it felt a little rushed to me. And, you know, I like the aesthetic where it's sort of, we're watching a TV show, but then we're also watching behind the scenes. So it's kind of almost like a found footage vibe too. Sure. And I appreciate that from it. And there was a lot about the film that I really loved. I loved the effects. I loved how we had, you know, I can't think of the guest that was on the show. Was it Carmichael? The guy with the really cool mustache and beard who was a magician who was now a skeptic. Really liked him. I thought he was a interesting character. He was such an ass, but he was so good at being an ass, if that makes sense. Yeah. I really liked that about it. And I liked, you know, the hypnotism and everything. Something with the pacing and the vibe just kind of, it pulled me out of it. And I like, you know, like Tonight shows and things. And I think it did that well. I think it really did do well at making you feel like you were on, like, watching a actual, like, Tonight show. But I don't know. I think the hype of it got to me. If I wouldn't have known of all the hype surrounding this film, maybe I would have enjoyed it more. But yeah, you know, maybe one more watch from me and I'll see if I like it more. But yeah, it was just, it didn't hit all the notes that I thought it would. So
It's fair.
What about you? What did you think of it? Because I want to hear what you thought, and then we'll get kind of deeper in.
I think I was kind of caught up with it after seeing the trailer. I really wanted to check it out because there was a vibe about it. There was an aesthetic about it that was really intriguing me. There were some other aspects about it that I think I went in to the film with an expectation of one thing, and then it went a different way. And I think that's what helped me get through it in a different way than you, because I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I think how I kind of perceived the whole thing up front is we're going to find out that this is all some big ratings push because it was sweeps week and all this shit. So it was just some big orchestrated ruse for ratings. So with that in mind, when I started seeing those chess pieces being played like that, I was like, okay, I got this figured out. Which in some aspect was a little disappointing because it was like, well, if I've got this figured out, then I just got to figure out how they're going to pull it off and all that. But then as some of the more fantastic stuff happened, I was like, well, maybe not. Maybe So I wasn't sure, so it put doubt on my expectations. And then as it played out, I was like, okay, so this is not what I was expecting at all.
Yeah.
And they really went for the devil in the late night show or whatever. And I was like, all right, that's interesting. I love I don't know what it is. And I think it's just some old soul in me somewhere. But I love that the aesthetic, the setting.
Yeah.
The old talk show.
That was my favorite thing, yeah.
The set, the sound, the way they even did the cuts because we went to like a full screen. Like anytime we were watching the show, it was full screen. And then when we'd cut to off the air into commercials, we went wide, black and white. So I love that aesthetic to kind of transition what we're actually seeing versus, what the camera is not seeing.
Yeah.
And so that back and forth I liked. The fact that it was 90 minutes, I think also worked in its favor, because while you could have probably padded it out a little bit and maybe extended it here and there, I don't think it needed it. I don't think we needed to try and cram in more and make this beefier than it was, because I think it did exactly what it was trying to do.
Yeah.
And the ending for me was I wasn't sure about it at first, because it was like trying to understand what actually happened. So to my understanding, because there were hints made about the woods, and then you see the cult, and we even had stuff up front about his wife dying of cancer. So to my understanding, he was responsible for his wife's death in making a deal with the devil, as it were.
Yeah.
Or whatever he did to become famous. So he practically sacrificed her to be famous. And then I guess whatever happened on the show could have been recompense for that. Like, devil's here to pay up, and I'm going to make you, even though you're famous, you're going to be so fucking famous after this, because look what you've done on TV.
Yeah, I kind of felt like the ending represented, because at the very end, they're talking about how much he has to pay, and I think the executive head says something about, I can't remember the line, but it's something along those lines of what he's going to give or where he's going to be. To me, it almost seemed like he was sacrificing everyone on the crew to be famous, and maybe that was the devil's plan, was to cause a sacrifice. But to me, it sort of showed his descent into madness, almost showed him selling his own soul for fame.
Yeah.
And everything. And I will say that is one thing that I will agree with you on, that I appreciated the hell out of. He was in the movie, he was going up against Johnny Carson. He was his show was the show other than Johnny Carson's. You look at old Johnny Carson clips, you watch this movie, you get the same vibe completely. And I do appreciate the hell out of that. And I will agree with you there. I like how when they cut away to certain things, it shows a certain way. Even though I will say, when they would cut to the behind the scenes stuff and it was in black and white, I feel like the picture was just a little more crisp than it needed to be, But
I also feel like that worked in its favor.
True.
Because you're really trying to create that difference between that old 70s, that warm, kind of hazy, fuzzy type picture, which, they could have made it just a little bit more 70s style.
Well,
but again,
it still had that
understand
vibe, I guess you could say.
Yeah. But, it wasn't so far removed or anything like that. Speaking of something very similar, which I was kind of wondering how they would do. I understand this is a very expensive process, so sometimes it might just be easier to do a digital recreation of the effect. But actually going back and trying to find those old cameras or the old film stock that they used back then, I understand could be very expensive to actually get that stuff. But if they really, really could have done it to really sell the idea and that look, I think that would have added an extra layer of authenticity that would have just made it even better for me personally. But I understand that maybe it might not look as good as you might want it to on film, or the effect would just kind of seem a little off-putting. I don't know. There could be a lot of reasons, but I think that would have been neat. But that's just
well, and I will say this, I do understand, because I remember we talked about this before. A lot of people said that when they first watched this movie, they would have preferred to watch it at home, because you really do feel like you're watching an old 70s late night show, and it works. And that is one thing that that's one point that really was a positive for me with the movie, was the fact that we took commercial breaks. And, obviously when you're listening at the beginning of it, they're talking about how this is from the show, but they're not showing the commercial breaks and everything for the simple fact that this is something that happened years ago, and it's they found this footage and they want to share it with people.
Yeah.
But the fact that you even see the screen cut to commercial, cut back, and, you know, the technical difficulties and the part with the static with the face in it. I thought that was really cool. I guess the thing with me is I don't necessarily think the film needed to be longer, because I do agree with you there. I like how we get from here to here, and it's a pretty quick film. I guess there was just a few things that I wanted a little more context with. Just a few things that would have really brought it home for me. Like, I wish the demon would have maybe said a little more about the woods. Maybe we would have found out a little bit more about this hidden cult. You know, I honestly wish there would have been a few more scenes of, you know, as weird as it sounds, of violence. A little bit more build up to that finale, which was kind of crazy. It, you know, the effects. This was another thing that like I loved, and I was also like, the electricity going through the girl and tearing her. To me, that looked like something out of like a 70s or 80s horror film. And I appreciated that. And at the same time, it kind of threw me off just a little with the way that her like head split open and everything. It threw me off. But it didn't, this film wasn't afraid to throw punches, that's for sure. You know, the one lady got pulled up by her necklace and her throat tore open. The skeptic got melted, which was really, really cool. And I feel bad for, what's his name? Was it Gus, I think? The assist...
his sidekick.
I felt really bad for Gus.
Yeah.
Got his head turned around.
He didn't want to be there.
he got the worst, I think, out of everybody. There was the hypnosis scene with the worms, which was just, I think, well done.
Yeah.
And it makes you, like, you're watching him hypnotize everybody, which is another thing I really appreciate about it. He's talking to the viewers at home, like he's pointing, and he's pointing into the camera, and you're technically one of the viewers at home. So then you see this play out, and then he snaps his fingers and, you know, does his thing, and everything's done. And then they go back and they play it back, and it's like, that's not really what happened. So it almost makes you feel like you were legitimately a part of that, and it gets you into the film. So I that is another thing that I really appreciated about it. The biggest thing I'm going to say that I appreciated about the film was Lily. Yeah. The actress that played her, I thought she did an amazing job. And even though it's brief when we kind of see that transformation, you know, you see the eyes, you see the face change, but then you see that one brief transformation where her face gets, you know, she gets the big smile, and it's the, you know, the big monstrous teeth in the smile. Like, you see that for just a moment.
Yeah.
I thought that was really well done. And as soon as she stepped out in the film, I just found her to be creepy in her own way. Like, you could just tell there was something off, and that it wasn't just that she was just like a traumatized kid. Like, there was something definitely off with her.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that. I think they did that really well. So, and, you know, maybe I'm nitpicking about it. I feel like I am nitpicking about it because overall I did enjoy the movie. There were just some things that kind of, like I said, that didn't do it for me. But I think that's just because, and we've had this conversation before too, you go in with a certain mindset. I guess I was expecting something a little different. I think I'm going to watch it again and watch it with a different mindset. And I think that'll make me appreciate it in a different sort of way.
I would definitely say if you kind of went into it with a certain expectation, because I've done that with certain movies where I'll go in expecting one thing and I'm like, I think like most recently that I could probably think of right off the top of my head is like something like Super Mario Brothers. I think maybe I had an expectation in my head, and when it didn't meet those expectations, I was like, oh. But then I rewatched it again at home, and I was like, you know what? It's not bad.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a bad movie. It's a lot of fun, you know, and take it for what it is. It's fun. It does what it's supposed to do. That's that. This, I think, like I said, I don't think it tries to overcomplicate the matter. It's very straightforward it's straightforward in the sense that all the pieces are there. They're not spoon feeding you everything, but the way they kind of explain everything is kind of done in abstract fashion, but the answer is there. It's clear as day what happened.
Yeah.
And I give it credit for being fairly original because this feels like something we've not really seen before in the aspect of maybe the setting.
Yeah.
You know, I know we've seen demon possession kind of stuff before, but the setting of it all felt new and fresh and unique.
Yeah.
And it's something we haven't really gotten before. And hats off to David Dastmalchian, man.
Yes.
I mean, he's one of these people, very much like Walton Goggins. He's one of those people you've seen off in the background for so long, and they're finally getting their due. And I really hope that his star continues to rise because he's a great actor.
Yeah.
And maybe he might not be, not to say that this isn't a character per se, but some people like to characterize, you've got your actors, and you got your character actors. He's a great character actor. Same with Walton Goggins. He's a great character actor. But they have clearly the ability to be leads.
Yeah.
And they can carry a movie. I thought he carried this movie great because he has that persona of the TV show host. You know, you kind of get vibes of various hosts of that time period that he might be trying to emulate in some fashion. And he just sells it.
Yeah.
You know, you don't. I felt like for at least the first hour, I'm trying to figure out where he stands on all this. And again, kind of what I said before: is this a ruse? Is he just pushing for ratings? All this stuff, and then it all kind of comes to a head. And then when you realize, oh, this is for ratings, but there's a lot more to it than that. It's not, the whole thing is not a ruse, but yeah, ratings were a part of it, which then feeds into why he was acting certain ways, pushing certain elements to keep going because people are watching, people are going to be talking about it, you're going to be number one, you keep pushing for it, and that's what he was doing, and it just led to his downfall. So
well, and I even think that's one thing about this movie that, now that I'm like thinking about it a little more, maybe one of the goals too was to make the audience just as confused as he was in the film, because you start out kind of where you are with it, you know, oh, this is for ratings. And you get that feeling from him. You get that feeling that he's like thinking of ways to get the ratings up. But then as you know, everything starts to derail, he gets confused. He's scared of what's going on. And I feel like watching the film kind of does that too, especially, like I said, the last like 15 minutes when he's stepping off of the stage or off the set, and then he ends up back on the set, but it's a different scene that he's doing, and he's confused as hell during it all. You know, while he's sitting there confused, I'm sitting there watching like, I'm right with you, buddy. Like, this is kind of weird. What's going on here?
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe that's something that they thought to do on purpose, was to just throw that confusion in. But his performance in this was phenomenal. I'm with you there. Like, he's not been in anything where his performance hasn't been good that I can think of. Like, I've enjoyed watching him in everything I've seen him in. Even when he's, you know, I always come back to this one, but even when he plays Polka Dot Man.
He's a guy that stands out. Like, when you see him, he lets his presence be known, and some actors just blend into the background, but he's like, look at me.
You know,
and you pay attention.
You know, it would be hilarious if one of the networks for like Halloween or for something let him come out in a suit like the one that he wore for the movie and like host part of the show or something. That would be hilarious.
Yeah.
Just to see. But no, we didn't really get to see his wife a whole lot in it. I thought the one part was kind of eerie, and I got to admit, it kind of like gave me like a moment of, I don't want to say it like, it didn't like give me a jump scare or anything, but it kind of just gave me a moment of like, oh, that's kind of creepy. It was when he was watching the clip back from when the girl was getting possessed and everything, and he saw his wife behind him, and then it shows her hand briefly touching his shoulder. It kind of gave me like a heebie-jeebie moment. I was like, ugh. So I appreciate that, and I know there's a lot of, if you pay attention in it, there's a lot of hidden little tidbits, especially when Lily looks at the camera. There's a lot of parts where it kind of flashes just for a moment, and you know that something's kind of off with it. But yeah, I don't know. This is one of those movies. I feel like if I watch it from a different standpoint, I'll probably like it more.
Since you're going to rewatch it again, and hopefully, because I'm sure I will too eventually. One thing, and maybe you caught something that I didn't when you watched it this time, but I felt like there was one little detail that they kind of tossed in, but never fully fleshed out. And there was an indication that there was something between Jack and June, which was the lady watching over, you just said her
Lily.
name, the little girl, Lily. And it was like and it could have just been something that they were tossing out there just to kind of mess with Jack's head, but it's a very specific thing, as if they had been, together or something of that nature. But to throw that in, but not really explain the whys behind it, like if she was in cahoots with this whole thing, then okay. Yep. So she got her comeuppance too, but I don't remember hearing anything that really gave a clear answer. It was just almost implied.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
And see, I'm trying to remember, because I'm pretty sure that was one of the things that kind of like bothered me a little bit, because it was like, you're talking about how she thinks Jack's handsome, and, she thinks he's very handsome. Is it that she, what kind of history do these two have together? Like, were they friends before? Because when they bring up the woods and everything, she's really confused. June is. She wants to, know from Jack, like, what are these tall trees? What is this? So does she not know about that? Does she, does she just have some kind of history with him where she's been on the show maybe before, or maybe they knew each other before, or does she just think he's handsome from TV? Like, we never get any more context that I'm aware of. That's the thing that irritates me. You want a movie to be 90 minutes, so you pick and choose what to put in, what to leave out. So it's almost like, down the road, are they going to release a director's cut where they're going to have a little bit of extra footage or something, and maybe we'll get a few answers that we didn't have before? Or, is there somewhere where we can look it up? Like, I'm curious about this. I want to know if, there's more to this, because there's just a few little questions they kind of touch on, but they leave you in the dark. And I get it. Being mysterious is part of some horror films. I understand that. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's like, there's gotta be something else that we're just not seeing here. Like, there has to be an explanation for certain things. And like I said, that's like the biggest thing to me that really just kind of irked me a little, because we're done with the film and I'm sitting there going, I still have questions that aren't answered. And I get some films do that. Like, I understand that, and I get it's a part of films, and sometimes you don't get answers to questions that you have. But I don't know, this felt to me like something that could have answered those things. And I also understand that they're, in the beginning when you're listening to the narrator, they're saying, this is the footage of the last broadcast that he did, and this is a combination of the actual performance and some behind the scenes, film that we've spliced together for you guys. Here's the story. And then they play it out. I think it would have been, because they could have done this one of two ways. They could have showed it live, but if they showed it live, then it would have been a much shorter movie, because we wouldn't have had any of that behind the scenes stuff. So I think that would have taken away. I think it would have been cool too if they would have maybe thrown in a commercial or two.
Yeah.
And maybe those commercials could have like started to get a little more crazy, or something. To me, it was like the demon wanted to, like you said, make him famous. And what would make him more famous than his audience dying, his staff dying, a bunch of people dying live on television, and then cutting to him stabbing that girl?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just having trouble for some reason wrapping my head around this movie. And I feel bad, because I did enjoy it for what it was. But like I said, there were a few things that I mainly just wanted answers to that I didn't get answers to.
Now, I know that I did hear, I think it was late yesterday, there was talk of maybe doing a sequel. I don't know if I want that. I feel like this is one of those films that could be what would you call it? It could take away from the mystique of it all.
Yeah.
But again, I do understand kind of what you're talking about, wanting those answers, and a sequel could very well provide those answers. So I'm kind of torn on it, because I don't want something to come along and then it takes away from the way this kind of ended, because I felt like the way it ended, while you might be left with a little bit of wonder and questions at the same time, I felt like it was enough to just let it be. And you can just be like, all right, well, that's how it is. Ain't nothing we can do about it, and just let it be. So that one's a hard sell for me.
The only way I could see them doing a sequel would be maybe, maybe go to like the 90s, maybe the 80s or the 90s for the setting, and maybe have like a documentary crew who wants to unravel what happened that night and wants to know about the tall trees and everything, and then they go on a journey to figure all of that out. And, maybe Jack didn't die, because I feel like they kind of left that open, because at the end, he's still alive. He's killed that girl.
Yeah.
So maybe he's locked in a asylum somewhere because he's spewing all these stories about the devil on his late night show and everything. And maybe this documentary crew bites off more than they can chew with it all. Mm-hmm. I could see something like that, but I don't think that you could capture the magic, as it were, as far as the way that they did this, the late night with the devil aesthetic. I don't think that you could do another film like, oh, here's more TV footage. Like, that would take it away from me immediately. If you did a sequel that was sort of like its own standalone project as well, maybe. But again, I would still.
Like, I don't want to use this as a straight comparison, but I understand what you mean. Almost like you'd have to do something completely different.
Yeah.
Because that was a thing. Kind of like Blair Witch 1 and 2.
Yes.
Blair Witch was a thing. Blair Witch 2 is its own thing. More traditional movie than the found footage stuff. So, not to say that that's what this needs to be if they do a sequel, but yeah, I do feel like it needs to find a new voice, a new approach, and not just emulate what that did.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to recapture that magic at all. I mean, that worked with what you set up, and that's done. I can't see you doing that again.
Yeah.
And making it work without rehashing.
Yeah, no, I feel like you just said, and it was funny when you were talking about comparing another film before you said Blair Witch. I was like, I bet he's probably going to say Blair Witch, because it is a good example of that. Yes, the second movie's not nearly as captivating as the first one was when it came out, but it's original, and that's what matters.
Yeah.
I don't know. I could probably get behind. A little bit of that if they were to do like documentary with the devil or something like that, and some team wanted to get answers to these questions. And I would love to see Jack Delroy again. I would love to see that character again. And maybe he's just lost his mind, and maybe he thinks he needs to kill everyone who's associated with it, or he's just been driven into madness. Maybe the demon has taken hold of him. I don't know. There's so many directions that you can go. But make sure you answer the questions that you left unanswered, even if it's just an interview with him in the documentary. I think it would be cool if the kids, like if they had like a group of kids interviewing him, and they start to get haunted by things. And so they start filming these occurrences, and things just start to, get worse. You're still going to get, you're going to get that found footage look. It's not exactly, the same aesthetic as this film was, but you could still build upon it, and you could tell an original story, at least, in that regard. But if they interviewed him and asked him, what was your relationship with June? Maybe he could get into that. Maybe it could be a little more details. Can you tell us about the tall trees? What was that? And maybe he's, real secretive. Maybe it turns into an occult film, and maybe the group in the tall trees is going to hunt these kids down because these kids are asking too many questions about their cult that they have. Yeah. I mean, it could go multiple directions, but for what this film was, yeah, I will give it another watch, because I feel like I owe it another watch, and I need to change my expectations just a little bit, because there was a lot that I did enjoy. There was a lot that I wanted that I didn't get, and maybe rewatching it will ignite something else in me. Also want to give a shout out real quick to, is it Faisal Bazi? He played the medium.
Christo, yeah.
Who ended up dying. I really liked his performance. I think he set the groundwork for what was to come. Mm-hmm. And there was just, there's something about his aesthetic, the accent and everything. I feel like it just really worked.
Yeah. And it really established, because it was very familiar, the way he came onto the program. You've seen that guy before. I feel Peter, and you're just like, oh, okay, we know this routine. Yeah. fishing, whatever. So yeah, when the skeptic comes in, it's like they're really setting that groundwork up so well because we've seen this routine, we know this routine, we've heard it a million times, and then when the skeptic's coming in, it's like, look what he's doing. He's just fumbling around. He's trying to find this and do that. And we're like, yeah, we know. So yeah, I thought having that character at the beginning, I felt like helped set the stage for what you thought was going to happen.
And
or at least for me.
And I will say, props to the audience member that was being a smart ass back to him, because that legitimately made me laugh.
Yeah.
He was mentioning the name. He's like, well, it's been my name for 40 years. Just all the random things he said. Just, I don't know. That, I feel like good horror films, you have to be able to at least have a laugh or two.
Sure.
I don't know. What did you think of Carmichael? Because I haven't really gotten your opinion on him.
I definitely felt like if there was anybody in this group that was part of that cult, he was definitely there, because he seemed like he was after the ratings just as much as Jack was.
Yeah.
Like pushing for it. It's like, oh man, we're going to do it right. And then of course, when everybody's like, I don't want to be here, especially when Gus was starting to push back, he was like, you're going to get out there and you're going to do your job because that's what you do. So I felt like if there was anybody who knew what was going on, it would have been him, 100%.
Yeah, it's always the skeptics,
the ratings chaser. Sure, yeah.
Well, and he did make a comment in the film too about the tall trees and the sacrifices, and then he made a comment about the orgies. He's like, I'd especially want to be there for the orgies, and he was like making comments and stuff, and I'm like, you either know about this or you're trying to be invited to this. Yeah.
So there's a little bit more going on there, sure.
Yeah, he was definitely the jerk character in this. I feel it between him and the one producer backstage who was telling everybody that they needed to.
Actually, that's where I think I got my characters mixed up. That's who I was referring to.
Oh, okay. Leo, I think it was Leo Fisk.
Leo, yeah. He's the one who I felt like was 100% in on it. Now, Carmichael could have been too, but I felt like he was just waiting to pop a bubble, burst it.
Yeah.
So maybe not as much as involved as maybe it made it sound like. So, but he was still an interesting character. Yeah, like even being, like you said, kind of an asshole about everything. His intentions were very much what they were about. He proved me wrong.
Yeah.
I know you're all hacks, you're all fake, so prove it. Prove me wrong.
And his interactions with Jack in the film really made me think about Jack as a character. I almost feel like Jack was pulled into this cult. Like it wasn't something that he sought out. It was like they pulled him into it and he just went with it. Because as bad as it sounds, to me, he almost seemed cowardly a little bit.
No, I see what
like
you mean.
He didn't like the confrontation. He didn't want the confrontation. He wanted to be number one, but he was trying to make everybody happy. He was trying to keep things peaceful. And don't get me wrong, there were a few scenes, like with Gus. He basically told Gus, like, you need to calm the hell down.
Yeah.
Nobody's leaving. Nobody's jumping ship. Everybody's staying. But even when he did that, if you watch the way that he goes about it, it's almost like he's second guessing himself a little bit. Like he's afraid to make certain decisions. And maybe that plays into the fact that he did whatever he could to be famous, and it basically sacrificed his wife.
Sure.
Well, I don't think. Yeah, I guess they were married, but yeah, there was another layer there that I kind of was like, Jack's kind of a coward toward a lot of this stuff, and I think that added to his responses to the demon and everything. And again, I will give that girl's name is Ingrid Torelli that played Lily. I will give that girl credit all day, because I think she did a beautiful job. And the whole possession thing, it's hard to do anyways. I mean, I think a lot of people, as weird as it sounds, a lot of people look toward Linda Blair. Yeah. And that's where they get their inspiration. And sometimes that's helpful, sometimes that's hurtful. Because you try too much to be like her, and that's instantly what we think is, oh, it's an Exorcist ripoff. But I feel like she was really original with her whole possession performance. I feel like she...
And even...
Good.
And even with the clear inspirations from The Exorcist, you could clearly see there were Exorcist vibes being played into. But like you said, it was enough difference. Like she wasn't emulating Linda Blair. They weren't trying to rip those off. It was almost like a tip of the hat to The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Because didn't even they do the power of Christ compels you?
Yeah, Gus did. And I'm pretty sure that was toward the end when her head had torn open and she snapped his neck. Which I will say that too. That's something that I appreciate that they did in this film. When she went full on like possessed, they didn't make her look like she did in the beginning. It was like she became intertwined with the set, which added another layer to, for me, it added another layer to the story. Like now she's integrated into your show. And I feel like if they would have just turned her into a, possessed little girl with the marks on her face and stuff, just attacking people, we would have gotten Exorcist vibes or Evil Dead vibes. We would have got something like that. Sure. And I'm glad that they, even though it was kind of like, it was off-putting the way that she looked at the end. The big old tore open head and just turning and, looking at them, I was like, that's a little off-putting. But I'm going to have to just give this film another watch, I think, give it another chance, because I enjoyed it for what it was, but yeah, going in with a certain mindset, I think that really threw it off for me. And that's happened before. It happens with everybody. Everybody has films. I'm not going to say that, I'm not going to say that it's the greatest film ever. I'm not going to say that it's a bad film. To me, it was just, this is pretty good.
The way I say it is, if a movie is sticking with you just a little bit long after you've watched it and you weren't sure how you felt about it, if it's sticking with you, give it another watch.
Yeah.
Because clearly something is sticking with you. So you can form your opinion even clearer after the fact, but if it's not, like if you've forgotten about it after you watched it, then don't bother, because clearly it didn't have any effect on you whatsoever. You were bored to tears.
I'll have to rewatch it, and then when we do the next episode, I'll talk about what I think next.
You may still have the same feeling that you did today. I mean, it's just maybe not your cup of tea. And that's fine.
So what would you say was your favorite thing about the film? Like, what's one thing about the film that really stands out to you?
I think it was just the build-up and the vibes of everything. Like I said, the aesthetic alone really helped sell it, because you just had this, like, what would that have been like? Because I even kind of had that visualization. You're sitting at home, I think it was like a Monday night or something like that, 10:30 at night, and you're watching TV, and all this shit is happening. Like, what in your brain is going on as you're witnessing this? Because if you think about it, this isn't unheard of. I mean, unheard of in the sense of demons showing up on television, but weird shit happening on live television and then people reacting. I mean, good case in point, that was actually very close into, I guess, the same time frame, is a show that a lot of people probably do not remember, was a show called Fridays, which aired on ABC. And that was kind of a Saturday Night Live competitor. Like, they were trying something new. Another network was trying to get something on there. Had a lot of great comedians on there, but there's that infamous scene of Andy Kaufman and Michael Richards having it out, smacking each other. And this happened on live television, and people are like, what the fuck is happening? Like, they didn't know if this was actually happening, or was it fake? Was it real? Like, they didn't know. So, yeah, imagine being in that situation where you're at home and all this shit's happening. It's like, I don't know what's happening anymore. So do you turn it off because you're freaked out, or do you just keep watching? So it was that vibe of that really kind of helped sell me on it. And like I said, the build up, because we start with that doubt.
Yeah.
It's like, we're dealing with, hucksters here. And then slowly they peel it off.
Yeah.
And reveal it. And never once, it's a very slow build, but it's a great build, because they never give it away at any point in time. It just slowly comes back, and every time you're like, maybe, and you're like, and they pull it back, and then they keep going. So I think that was just the icing on the cake, is how they approached it and how they pulled it off.
Yeah. You just made me think of something that would be awesome if some network just released a TV show and it had the aesthetic of being like the news or something live, and just weird shit happened in the show. That would be phenomenal. just to fuck with people. Now, So that was your favorite thing. Is there something that you wish would have been a little different? Maybe a least favorite thing with the movie? Because I mean, sometimes there's room for improvement.
I don't know if there's anything right off the top of my head that, I mean, if we want to get like really, really specific, and I understand why people would be a little upset about this, but I wouldn't have even noticed, honestly, is the whole AI images that were created for the we'll be back after these messages kind of things.
Yeah.
And I know people were really pissy about that, which, again, I understand. I get it. But if no one created that stuff and it's not emulating something that anyone's already done and it was just something to kind of slap together, who's it hurting? Maybe I understand, hire an artist. I get it. I'm not advocating for it because I, too, am at risk of having art jobs taken away because I can consider myself an artist, if you will. So I get it. But if that could make it faster and you just needed something for the moment that no one's going to pay, any attention to, because I sure as hell didn't. I don't remember them.
Yeah.
So what does it hurt? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just, I'm sure I'll have people coming at me, but I understand what I'm saying. They were literally things I do not remember at all in the film. Do you? Do you remember them?
The only thing I remember is at the end, one of the logos melted. That's all I remember.
But no, I don't remember these, after these commercial breaks, images on the I really don't.
Yeah.
So either we watched a version that didn't have them in it, or they were just that forgettable. And either way, I don't remember them. So who the hell is paying attention to this so delicately as to be like, look, AI on television. I don't know.
I get what you mean.
No, I can't really think of anything. And again, I don't want to sit there and say, it's so perfect or anything like that I can't think of anything negative, but I can't think of anything right off the top of my head that I was just like, oh man, I wish they hadn't have done that, or that kind of took me out of it. It's just, nothing's coming to mind.
Yeah.
Outside of that one little thing that they never explained with June and Jack that they alluded to, that's the only thing I would at least have wanted. Just even a line. Yeah, they fucked or something like that. Okay, cool. We got it.
Right.
So maybe he was cheating on his wife or something like that. Whatever it may be.
I could see that. Yeah. And, and mine's pretty simple. There were a few things that, like I said, I wish there would have been more context for in the film. That'd probably be my biggest thing. And it sounds like you just touched on the things that I wish there would have been a little more context with. And yeah, I think the overall aesthetic, the overall personal feeling you get watching the film would probably be my favorite thing about it.
Sure.
So yeah, I would recommend the film for people to give a watch. Don't go in with the mindset that I went in with. Go in with the mindset that you had. Look at it from that way, and hop off the hype train, people. If you're expecting something, and I think that's the problem. I was on the hype train, and I think that kind of killed it for me because the hype train made me think it was going to be something completely different.
Yeah.
And I think that's what killed it for me. But it is still sticking with me, so I'm probably going to give it another watch just to see if my opinion changes, if I pick up on some things that I didn't before, because I feel like I owe it that much, at least, to watch it again. Random, but there is another movie that I know we do need to watch and review, and that's just because for some reason after I watched this movie, it popped up on Shudder as well, and it was When Evil Lurks, which is another possession movie, but it's apparently about a whole town being possessed, and I do know that there is one scene that's pretty disturbing involving a dog and a child.
I'll have to make sure I don't watch that with Katrina, because that's 2 sins right there for her.
Well, the dog attacks the child, so the dog gets possessed. I've seen the clip. It's a brief scene, but it is very brutal. The little brother looks under the table. The dog grabs up the little girl and shakes his head, and blood goes everywhere. And then the dog runs off with the little girl, I believe. Yeah, I've heard a lot of mixed reviews. I know Leah that we've had on before. She's talked to us about it. Not in a lot of detail. She was surprised we hadn't watched it yet. I do remember that.
Yeah.
But that is definitely one that I think would be worth a watch and a review.
Sure.
But I don't really have anything else on this movie. Like I said, I I'm going to give it another watch, and I'm sure I'll have more to say about it. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't that I didn't enjoy it. It missed a few marks for me, was all, personally. So
sure,
but
understandable.
I'll have to give it another watch, because I'm sure if I give it another watch and look at it through a different lens than what I initially did, I feel like I would enjoy it, because I enjoyed it for what it was. So, but
and like I said, you may watch it again and just be like, still not for me, and that's perfectly fine.
I mean, it happens.
Yeah, it happens.
So, yeah, if you don't have anything else, man, we can close out.
No, Ramblers, what did you think of Late Night with the Devil? Did you get to see it in theaters? Did you watch it on Shudder? Did you watch it on another platform? Let us know on social media at Horror Ramblings. If you've got more to say, a tweet just not going to cut it. Send us an email at horrorramblings@gmail.com. I need to make sure that I'm saying the entire thing, because I could just say at Gmail and you'd be like, what? But, I mean, the links are down below. So you can join our Facebook group, join us on Discord, find us on Instagram, check us out over on Patreon, leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcasting app, and see if we posted up any questions and polls over on Spotify. Everything can be found over at pencilpaperproductions.com/horror-ramblings, and of course, links are all down below.
And remember, guys, stay spooky out there.
This has been the Horror Ramblings podcast. Join us next time for even more.
This has been a Pencil and Paper Podcast Network production.